I call to order this January 7th meeting of the North Allegheny School Board. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Starting with our calendar review, we have this evening, we will have a finance update and then our balanced scorecard report. And on January 21st, we will have our regular voting meeting, and there are no presentations scheduled for that evening. Dr. Highland, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Warner, and Happy New Year to the board and Happy New Year to everyone that's in the audience. Tonight, we have two presentations. The first is going to be some finance updates, and with that, I'm going to kick it over to Mr. Hauser.
Thank you, Dr. Highland. Yes, in the beginning of the year, we just wanted to have a quick finance update. We have two items on our agenda for tonight. One is the completion of the results from the completion of our 24-25 audit, and then the next will be a quick debt issuance update from our bond counsel, Anthony Ditka from Dinsmore. But first, I'd like to bring up Mr. McCall from our DUSL to go through our 24-25 audited results.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I will keep this brief, and I always say a non-exciting and brief audit report is usually a good one. So I'm here just briefly to talk about the audit results for June 30th, 2025. As the auditors for the school district, really our responsibility is to come in and audit the financials and the numbers that are prepared by the district. Really our role as the auditors is just come in, make sure those numbers are materially accurate, make sure within the financial statements those disclosures are also materially accurate. In performing your audit, we follow government auditing standards in addition to general accepted auditing standards and also the uniform guidance. Uniform guidance because of the amount of federal money you receive. We also have to perform tests of compliance over some of your federal dollars to make sure they were spent appropriately. Just some highlights here, significant accounting policies. You did have to adopt a new accounting standard, the GASB up there. It's the Government Accounting Standards Board. They set what your financial statements are supposed to look like. So you were required to adopt that standard in the current year. It required restating your financial statements. That's not a bad thing. Everyone was really required to do that. It updated the liability related to compensated absences such as sick time and PTO. Within your financial statements and most sets of financial statements, there's significant estimates and disclosures within your audit report as well as every school district within the Commonwealth. You have estimates for the net pension and OPEB, which would be your post-employment health care liability. So those are calculated at the state level or by an actuary. So we do audit those and look at those, but there's a pretty big numbers that are estimates at the end of the day. So that's why we point to those as well. This is really the key part here, these next two things. Like I said, I'm here in January. The year's been over for 6 months. No material audit adjustments is part of our audit process. So the numbers that you're looking at working with throughout the year, we didn't come in months after year end and say, hey, we need to adjust this. We need to correct this number. We do have districts we work with that we're just starting the audit right now, some that we're starting the audit for last year. So being here on time, no material audit adjustments, it's a really important thing. To get there takes work on our part, but really good cooperation from your team. The team here is always timely here in getting us all the information. Most recently, too, they've received the certificate for financial reporting achievement. It's called the ACFR is what we call it. But basically you submit your financials. It goes through a rigorous review to make sure you're following all the standards, and you received your certificate for that this year for last year's financials for the first time. So I think that just builds upon what I'm saying here, but happy to report no material audit adjustments as part of our process. The fund balance, once again, a little bit in history, looking at 6/30/25 here. Those are some numbers. I'll jump to this next slide. As far as the actual balance at the end of the year, you can see there's a budgeting cap on the third bullet, 8% cap on that fund balance by PDE. You ended the year with your actual balance at 7.9%. Kind of along the same lines, your general fund balance as a percentage of your expenditures, 15%. The GFOA, who's the Government Finance Officers Association, they're kind of like the go-to for ratios and different things. Where should you be financially? They recommend 2 months minimum in unassigned fund balance. So you're pretty much there where you have a healthy fund balance, but you can only have so much in there. Local municipalities like Franklin Park, McCandless, I would tell them I want them to have that number be higher. You're really constrained by the PA budgeting rules that you can only have so much there. So you're kind of right where these metrics say you should be. The other matters, I mentioned the federal dollars, what we call that the single audit, because you expended federal dollars over $750,000. We had to test the special education cluster and the expenditures there to make sure everything there was in compliance with federal regulations. We also have to look at your internal controls. Happy to report no findings there. Management recommendations. So sometimes we will issue a management letter that are items lower than findings. We didn't have any written comments this year on your internal controls or other matters. And as far as the actual audit results, then it was an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the best type of opinion you can receive. That is it. Happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions on the audit report? I just wanted to say I'm not surprised, but certainly pleased to hear about the good cooperation from our finance department. It did not surprise me at all. And I had never heard of the Government Finance Officers Association. And I think I really appreciate how you included that they recommend having that 2 months minimum for a fund balance, because some people have questions about that. And so I appreciated that, because we're limited to that 8%, but also there's also reasons why the 2 months makes a lot of sense and helps us be more prepared as a school district for the ups and downs of what we may encounter. So I appreciated you mentioning that. And but I don't think anyone else had any comments. So Mr. Hausen?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McCall. All right. And yes, and the audited financial statements are online. They are posted online under for the public. In addition, I said we had our bond counsel here, Anthony Ditka. In the spring of 2026, as mentioned in previous presentations, we're going to be going out for new debt. And we have not gone out for new debt since 2019. So I thought it would be prudent to have our bond counsel come and just to kind of explain the different steps that are taken for this new debt. Again, what we're planning on in the spring is roughly a $10 million issuance. That was our estimates in previous presentations, and it's related to upcoming construction costs. You want to go through our timeline? You don't need a clicker.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Anthony Ditka. It has been a while since we borrowed new money, but the process is very similar to what we followed last year when we did the refunding. Anytime a local government in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that's a school, township, borough, county, wants to borrow, you follow the protocols of the Local Government Unit Debt Act. Additionally, since the district has the ability to issue on a tax-exempt basis, we also have to follow the IRS Internal Revenue Code. Finally, because your bonds will be publicly traded, we have to follow the rules from the securities law for issuance of public debt. So there's a lot to do here, but it's really a very tight process. It will not take long. The first step is on tonight's agenda, there is a reimbursement resolution. A reimbursement resolution is a creature of the tax code. It does not commit you to a project. It does not say we're absolutely going to do anything. What it says is we declare, North Allegheny School District declares that we are going to reimburse ourselves out of a future tax exempt deal if we start to spend our own dollars and if we pursue the project. So that's why it is super short. It is 1 page plus a signature page. And almost all the language mirrors things right out of the tax code. It is an exceptionally good idea. It does not cost anything. It does not bind you to anything, and it protects your ability to reimburse yourself. Last thing about it is it looks backwards 60 days. So the reason we want to do this now is if you had started spending money 70 days ago, we couldn't reimburse that. So we do it now ahead of the project so that you make sure you can capture everything you might spend. And it looks forward 18 months. So you've got plenty of time to reimburse yourself later. So that's the first step. That's today. In February, there would be an appointment resolution. That's kind of a formal resolution that says that you're going to allow myself and your investment banker, it has traditionally been PNC Capital Markets, to go ahead and do the things to get you ready for March. That includes anytime you're going to borrow money, we have to follow the protocols of the Local Government Unit Debt Act, and that means advertising in advance of your meeting so that we summarize anything that the school district is going to adopt to get the bond issues out there, and to make a statement that we're within your legal borrowing capacity. Your borrowing capacity is calculated this way. Take your last 3 years' revenues, take the average, multiply it by 2.25. This district has plenty of borrowing capacity, as much as anyone in the state. So in February, the adoption of the appointment resolution just lets us get to work. In March, that's when we would come back with a full bond resolution. That's the 40-page one you might remember from last year, where we do everything necessary to issue the bonds. I'll make that presentation in March. So it's a good timeline, it's tight, and if we follow it, you could have dollars available to you in April or early May. Now, the reason for 10 million, by the way, just as a side note, there are certain things under the tax code that give borrowers an advantage. If you issue 10 million or less in a calendar year, you are considered a small issuer. And banks and financial institutions who buy your bonds get special tax benefits. That means that you pay lower rates. They're willing to give you a better rate on your borrowing than if you were above 10 million. It can be 10 to 15 to 20 basis points. So it's significant. The other advantage is because your project is going to be phased, it's going to be coming over a period of years. Every time you do an issue, you do it with an expectation of spending 85% of the amount of the issue within 3 years. So if you do it in pieces, you keep kicking that 3 years out. So you give yourself plenty of time to do the project. So we'll spend the first 10 million in the first 3 years. Then whenever you are ready for phase 2, you'll have 3 years from that date. Whenever you're ready for phase 3, you'll have 3 years from that date. So this is an excellent way to get started. It is low risk. It is good planning, and it allows you to get to work on all of those schools. I only attended 2 of them. You get to work on all of those schools and get your project underway.
You only went to 2, not 3.
Is Carson up there?
Oh, I thought you had one of the.
There you go. NAI and Nash.
What was
So,
your elementary?
Jose.
It's up there.
There it is, 3. So
3.
all the principals here, I don't want to say my kids' names, they'll start to twitch, but Timmy Ditka would. So that's all I've got. Any questions? I'll be back in February and I'll be back in March. So this is a 3-step voting process for this board.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ditka about the bond issuance? Okay, all right. Thank you so much for coming tonight and
Thank you
explaining
very
to us.
much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Mr. Ditka.
And again, that's all I had as a quick finance update for the January meeting. So thank you very much. Dr. Hyman, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much. Our next report is our balanced scorecard report. If everyone recalls, last year we passed a comprehensive strategic plan. And part of our plan was that we were going to make sure that we set goals. Number 2, we were going to make sure that we set quantifiable metrics to determine whether we are meeting those goals. And then we also said that we were going to be very accountable and transparent with our community. Tonight is that night. Tonight, we are in the middle of football season, right? The Steelers are going to the playoffs. This is the Super Bowl for our administrative team, our teachers, and quite frankly, the entire district, because we are beginning to report out how we're doing as a district. And tonight can be seen as a report card. One is a reflection of how we're doing, but it's also a progress report because we believe in continuous improvement. And so tonight we're going to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I'm very confident that tonight you're going to see a lot of good and a lot of continuous improvement. Doesn't mean we're perfect, but we're striving to be perfect. And I would like to thank my administrators who make up 99.9% of the audience tonight. Thank you very much for giving up time with your families to be here. The administrators are going to talk about if there is a question from the board about their key performance indicators, but the executive council members who are responsible for each goal will get up and give a presentation or an overview of each one of those goals. And then with your indulgence, Mrs. Warner, I'd like the board to be able to ask any questions after each goal. So we have 5 goals, and after each goal, so that you don't have to remember your questions as you're going through each one. After goal 1, we'll stop and we'll take questions, and we'll go all the way through goal 5. One other thing I'd like to add, normally we give a report on student performance that talks about our academic results for our students. We have combined our report on academic performance into our balanced scorecard because obviously that's goal 1 from our plan. But for the public, I want you to know, although there's no one here except for Mrs. Gibbs, those people online, that they can read that full report on the agenda, which is can be found where you normally find the agenda. Fair enough? Okay, so with that, I am going to turn it over to goal 1, and that would be Dr. Dow and Mr. DeRamo.
All right, thank you for having us tonight. As you know, we have 5 goals for our balanced scorecard, and Mr. DeRamo and I are the goal leaders for goal 1, which is about academic performance.
Oh, you know what, Dr. Dow, go back to the last screen. I failed to kind of give an overview. For those people that are, I know the board is very, very familiar with this, but for those people that may be listening to this at a later date, you will notice in the balanced scorecard, you will see some green check marks, you will see some green dots, you will see some red dots. You won't see a lot of red X's because we're going to give ourselves some grace, because a red X would indicate that we have not met that target. However, we have until 28-29 to determine whether we hit that target or whether we did not hit that target. And so we're going to give ourselves some grace on that. Fortunately, some of the targets that we did set, we were able to accomplish with the hard work of the administrative team that we have in front of you. So with that, I wanted to make sure that I said that. And one last thing, I want to thank the board for their support of the comprehensive and strategic plan. I will say to anyone that will listen, this board has, if we asked for something in support of these key performance indicators, this board has said yes. And I think that needs to be publicly acknowledged. And I want to thank you very much for your support of your plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over back to Dr. Dow.
All right, thank you. So if we look at key performance indicator 1.11, it's related to our elementary schools. And I get to start off with a really positive note here. One of the things to note is that in our baseline, we had 3 possible areas that they could be above or well above, and that was in ELA, math, and science. For this current school year, there were not science scores because the PSSAs moved from 4th grade to 5th grade. So it was a pilot year. So we did not receive scores in science. We will again next year. So that's why the baseline is out of 2 instead of 3. But I'm really happy to report that 6 of the 7 schools met the target by getting 100% of the ELA and math in their buildings. So really proud of them for that.
In terms of middle school for 1.12, this is also as an echo regarding the science not calculating from 4 to 3 areas for each of the 3 middle schools. One of the 3 schools was able to meet that growth area in our mathematics area specific to algebra in the Keystone. We know we have some work to do, and we are efforting towards that with our English language arts examination of the curriculum and ongoing revisions. But that is where we stand for 1.12. For 1.13, this is now the high school area. And I also want to just make sure and emphasize, this is specific to above or well above the state standard. So this would not be a reflection of meeting adequate growth, but actually one step further than that. So that obviously is involved with the middle school and the high school, which in the area of literature and biology, that was met. I also want to emphasize in the area of the high school, in the Keystone Algebra, A lot of those are first-time test takers that did not take the Keystone exam as 8th graders, or second chance test takers or beyond at the high school level.
All right, 1.14, this is looking at our subgroups, and we thought it was really important that we're not only looking at the overall, but we're looking at specific areas. So something to explain with this is when you look at your baseline and then you look at the 2024-25 school year, you'll see the numbers are all different. The reason for that is there's going to be variation each year in our subgroups because you have to have a certain end count in order to have a subgroup. So for example, in one year in 4th grade, we may have 11 students who have the special education designation, but then the next year there may only be 9, so they wouldn't have a subgroup. So it will vary per school, by grade level, different things. So you can see that there's difference there. I think the good news is we had one school that met 4 out of the 4 targets. So in all 4 areas that they had subgroups, they were successful. And we had 3 of our other schools who also made improvement in this area. I think this is an area where we have different things going on. I think it's the first time that we're really digging this deep into our subgroups. So I'm really proud of the work that was done in this last year, and I can't wait to see this metric continue to move.
For 1.2, I want to acknowledge that the target has already been met. Last year's baseline score of the 93.8%, I want to make sure everybody understands, we have just under 2,000 total AP tests administered and taken by our students at North Allegheny. 95.37% scored a 3, 4, or 5 on each of those assessments. So that's a reflection of the strong work, obviously, by our teachers in the classroom, but also the efforts of our students. So phenomenal job for 1.2. For 1.3, this is a reflection of the survey, increasing the percentage of students and parents who strongly agree or agree that the classes offered provide a rigorous and challenging curriculum. The first part of our work, once we receive the baseline scores, we're helping students understand, depending on the developmental level, what the word rigorous means and defining that for them. And as we continue to do that, I'm pleased to show that the results from 24-25, 10 of our 12 schools demonstrated growth in that area, and also the high schools collectively meeting the target of exceeding 90% or more in that area.
All right. For KPI 1.4, which is looking at the increasing the percentage of students and parents who strongly agree that students feel prepared for their next school year or life beyond North Allegheny. I'm proud to report that 9 of our 12 schools have met the target this year, but the 3 that haven't, 2 of them made improvements, and they really aren't very far from our target. So we will continue to work in this area. And I think, like Mr. Duramo said, some of this is just talking to the students about what that really means. This is for elementary, it's a question that's interesting to them to know if they're prepared or not. So we're working with those students in these areas. 1.5, we're looking at increasing the number of students and parents who strongly agree that collaboration, creativity, communication, critical thinking, and problem solving are integrated in classroom activities. And again, 9 of our 12 schools have met this goal. And same, 2 of the 3 made improvements. And if you look, one of our schools is less than a percentage away from meeting the target. So I think this is something that we've really strived. I think a lot of work has been done with our technology department, and we've done a lot this year. So I'm really excited about these results as well.
For goal 1.6, the district will increase its overall ranking in the Pittsburgh Business Times. Obviously, our goal, to Dr. Hyland's earlier point of the Super Bowl, we want to be number 1. I know Mr. Kowalski caught the game-winning missed field goal. Our goal is for him to catch the game-winning winning field goal in the Super Bowl. But the Pittsburgh Business Times is a summation of 3 years of the collection of standardized test data, mainly the PSSA and Keystone. We've maintained consistency in that area, 23-24 baseline of 7, and remaining so during the 24-25 school year. In 1.7, increasing the district's high school national ranking. This is out of the U.S. News and World Report. We did demonstrate a growth area there. This is out of almost 18,000 high schools ranked around the country. We are in the top 5.09% with the target of being in the top 3% nationally. So once again, job well done by our high school.
All right, so just to kind of surmise where we are, sorry, if you want to hit, there you go. Our strengths, 6 of the 7 elementary schools met the target for performing above or well above the state standards for academic growth in PVAS, with 4 schools showing an increase in their subgroup scores.
95% of the AP students passing the exam at a 3 or higher, as we emphasized earlier, as well as 9 of the 12 schools meeting the target for KPIs 1.4 and 1.5. And increasing the high school U.S. News and World Report ranking.
All right, and opportunities for improvement. Obviously, we want to continue to strive for 100% on growing students in our IEP, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and our English language learner subgroups.
Increasing the number of parents and students at the elementary and middle level who believe North Allegheny offers a rigorous and challenging curriculum. And once again, increasing the ranking in the overall Pittsburgh Business Times.
All right. Are there any questions about Goal 1?
Ms. Hardy.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Thank you both so much for presenting this evening. Absolute amazing results in a lot of areas. And I'd like to tip my hat to our audience this evening. Due to all their hard work on this, we really pushed for this in the past year. And so thrilled to see the progress made in just 1 year after the first year starting this. I wanted to ask if you could share a little bit with us on what the approach will be to try and improve growth in students with identified subgroups.
Chris, would you like to? Chris is Dr. Shute is the KPI leader, so we're going to let him.
Oh gosh,
Good
you have
evening,
a
everyone. I think
microphone in the audience, fun.
how about that? I think one of the main things to that point, we want to make sure all of our students are experiencing growth and success. Those identified subgroups are very important in our community and in our schools. I think the system that we're trying to build and continuing to build is to identify those students, but also identify what those needs are as well. Making sure that we have various progress monitoring pieces and various ways that we can track their data from the beginning of the year to see that gradual growth. As we know, this PBOS and these growth scores come from their PSSA and their Keystone exams, which they're only taking 1 time a year. We want to make sure we have a systematic way to see that growth and those trends positively and negatively so we can then directly impact what those students are achieving. I think the other key piece with our subgroup is these students also have other factors that are impeding or potentially impeding their learning as well. Making sure they feel connected to their buildings, making sure we're developing their English language skills, making sure we're instructing them not only towards their IEP goals, but also towards their academic and grade level goals as well. So it really is a combined effort to make sure we're creating that environment for that whole child to be successful. And I think it's positive to see we're trending towards that direction. And I think this is something we'll need to continue to work on and evaluate through our data.
Mm-hmm.
I would also like to add, I think this is something that we are addressing in our curriculum reviews to look at the resources and the materials that we're using. For example, if we have students who receive services that are outside of their general ed curriculum, what are we using for them so that if they go back into the general curriculum, are they prepared? Are they ready? So I think we're taking kind of a holistic approach to looking at this.
I would add one other thing too. I think the most important thing is that we are reporting out publicly on those subgroups. I would hazard a guess there are not many districts that are going to put it up on a screen publicly that we are looking at those individual small groups and holding ourselves accountable for those kids. We are sending a message to, let's say, an example, we've had so many parents come to the mic or whatever. What are we doing for our special education kids? This I can go to this and I can say we are specifically looking at them and making sure that they are making progress every single year. And when they're not, we're going to hold ourselves accountable to make sure that they do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Hyland. I know a lot of work has been done in special education and paying attention and making sure that those students are are thought of, and it's intentional, their inclusivity in all the curriculum and all the area. I just wanted to allow the district to talk a little bit more about it. And I wanted to ask Mr. Duramo about middle school and any plans for improvement there in terms of growth.
Just in general at the middle
Yeah.
school level?
Yes.
Well, sure. Every year we're trying to grow.
Let's
middle-
talk math and English. Let's get right to it. Let's get to it.
Yes, I think it's an exciting opportunity as we continue to move forward in planning with the new collective bargaining agreement. We have our administrative team in conjunction with our other teacher leaders, Steve Smith and our curriculum team. We're looking at the possible potential redesign of the educational programming schedule and how we're delivering instruction in the classrooms. So I believe that will assist our staff to increase the overall performance of growth and achievement in our middle schools. And that's something that we are currently behind the scenes right now, working in conjunction with our teacher leaders and our principals. So I anticipate continued growth in the very near future.
Excellent. Thrilled to hear the team is working on it. No more questions.
Dr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Just a quick question, and I think I've asked this before. For 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, where you're looking at percentage of students and parents who feel one way or another, again, you're combining responses from students and parents, and I always wonder whether those are aligned or not aligned, and whether there's disagreement from one group versus another, and whether or not the data is skewed by the numbers of responses from students versus parents. So I don't know if you want to comment on that or not, or if it's out. It always stands out to me, so I want to ask about that.
I don't have the exact numbers to say 1.3, there was, a 10% difference, but I will tell you the majority of the time when I was doing, and I focused obviously on elementary, there were a few differences in things, but they were pretty similar in most areas. Occasionally we would get one, say from the students, for example, on the survey, the one that comes to mind is lunches. The students probably give a lower score there than the parents do, but that's because the parents aren't imbibing in the lunch. So I think there are things like that when it really impacts, students, they may have a different view, and it could be a positive. So, but I would be happy to give that information too. I mean, I can send you the variance and the scores.
The perception of the homework challenge, I know the parents had a higher level of perception of the meaningfulness of homework, and the students obviously not sharing that same opinion. But that was just one example at the secondary level.
But it also, we've talked about the survey that went out to the parents and the students, and we gave the results. One of the things that we found out that the data did collate is, kids treating each other with respect. We found that there were some similarities with that data. I would say, Dr. Gibbs, that we do look at each of those in isolation as well. If we see that there is a hotspot with students, what our administrators will do is they will make that part of the administrative plan for that year for each individual teacher or principal of that school to look at those data. The reason we kind of put it combined is just to be able to give some sort of measuring point for our community to be able to see where we are on a holistic point of view. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not looking at that individual, whether it's parents or students. If we have a hot spot, we're going to make an action plan to make sure that we address that. Does that? Okay.
Mrs. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Well, I don't even want to guess how many years in a row, I'm going to give a shout out to Mr. Andrzejczyk, because every year we say that he can't possibly achieve more growth, and somehow every year he manages to improve. So really impressed with how he did that in both categories. Another thing that I'm excited about, and I realize to get to our top 3%, I'm really excited that we are improving. I really like us improving, because one thing that a lot of people don't realize is colleges look at your rankings and score, and we can get more of our kids into colleges, the better that we're ranked as a high school. It will help us. And Pittsburgh Business Times, while we stayed the same, I think that we're going to keep improving if we stick to this new plan that we have. And that's really the most important thing, that we stick to the plan, we keep seeing improvement. And I will say publicly, this is the first time that to say that we're being transparent, I think would be an understatement. We have everything there for everyone to see. I see a lot of green check marks, which is great. And we're hopefully going to just continue to see improvement. That's the goal. That's what we're all trying to achieve. And I really feel like we're headed in the right direction with everything we're doing. And I'm very pleased with most of our achievements is what I'll say. And I'm going to keep looking for more achievements. But I loved the AP scores too. That was something really significant. And another thing that, again, is going to help our students at that college level. You know, they won't have to take a class, which for those who don't have children in college yet, not only is it less of a burden on the child that now they have to take one less class, it's also less of a burden in the pocketbook for the parents. So that's pretty significant too. And I'm just seeing some great things. And the couple of things that aren't as great, I'm going to look next year and hope for really great things there too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Winiger.
Sure, thank you. Kind of to dovetail onto Mrs. Hardy's question earlier about question 114. And I don't mean to distill your answer down a little more, but you had mentioned looking at test scores and certain things like that as one of the metrics of like how do we improve things. When we analyze this and how do we make ourselves actually better and improve scores, I'm going to ask the question the opposite way. Have you all been able to maybe identify or think of things that definitely didn't work and would be removed from the curriculum so we have more time to focus on maybe the things that do?
I think that's a great question. I think we're always reflective in what we're teaching and what's effective and maybe what is not quite as effective as well. I think we're doing that instructionally to see what teachers are instructing, how is that positively or negatively affecting, but also curricularly, how is what we are teaching and the information that we're teaching reaching our students. So I really think it's a continuous model that we're looking at to really make sure not only are we improving what we know is working, but then reflecting based on our data and our progress monitoring what might not be so effective and adapting that to something that is meeting the needs of our students.
It'd be interesting when that kind of analysis is done, is maybe just to share some of those tidbits too of like, hey, these are the, X, Y, and Z. We're finding they're really working, and A, B, and C, we're finding they're not effective, and we're actually going to remove those. That would be super interesting to hear the actual, what the educational professionals actually are seeing is working versus not working. That'd be cool.
Absolutely.
I would also,
Finger too. Oh, sorry, Mr. Durama. I would just add from the special education perspective, one of the things that we've looked at that, isn't always working and sometimes pulling students out of the general education curriculum and not providing that intervention and remediation that they need. So we're really looking at in the special education department how kids are accessing the general education curriculum, because that's really going to help our outcomes here. And then looking at their needs specifically with their IEP goals to determine where might a disconnect be. So if something is a tested area, they might not be getting that curriculum at all or access to that curriculum if they're being pulled out. So we're really strategically looking at what kids are learning, why they're learning it, what their needs are, and making sure that that all lines up beautifully to help prepare them not only to grow in progress, but to be able to understand the components of the test, what's going on, but most importantly, access that general education curriculum in the least restrictive environment.
Thank you.
Yep.
To answer that question also, and to piggyback off the earlier question specific to middle school, what we know hasn't been working is currently our educational programming at the middle level specific to mathematics in terms of instructional time offered to teachers and students, we rank at the near bottom of instructional time of mathematics delivery at the middle level. And with our goal of continuing to examine our scheduling and programming moving forward, we would like to lead the region in that area. So this is a prime opportunity to do that specifically.
One more piece that I'll add to off of what everybody else said. We're also able through PVOS to look at specific teachers and their data and pull reports on each specific teacher and how well their instruction is meeting the needs of these students, such as students with special needs or IEPs or economically disadvantaged. And it's been really eye-opening for the teachers to be able to see like, wow, my instruction is really geared towards maybe like the top 20% of my class or vice versa. We've been able to sit down with our teachers and look at reports like that to see the trends between teachers and how they instruct and how that's reaching their students too.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I am kind of, what struck me here in the question to students and parents about, do you feel prepared for the next school year or the year after graduating? And I guess I wasn't that surprised to see that because we do 8th grade and then we do 10th grade and 12th grade. I guess I wasn't that surprised. I'm guessing that kids leaving middle school and going to the high school and kids leaving NAI and going to Nash probably have a lot of anxiety about moving to that next level. I'm hypothesizing here. So I'm thinking maybe that's why those the buildings that are struggling most are like the ones with the 8th graders and the 10th graders and that. And I don't know if anyone else, I guess I don't really have a question, but does anybody in those levels have anything they want to weigh in on there or any ideas of, I don't know, like, are we scaring our kids too much about, I know my kids were nervous about going to high school and and that junior year is hard, that kind of thing. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? If not, that's fine. I'm just curious. I know you're a data hound, Ms. Dr. Hibbner.
I think it's important for us to really help our kids with that transition, very much specific to 8 to 9. We know that transition is very difficult. And one of the approaches we are taking is trying to educate our parents. We feel like if our parents can also talk with our kids about what that transition looked like and help prepare them for what that is, that they will feel more comfortable going to the 9th grade. I know that Dr. Hibbner and her team does an amazing job with, helping kids come into the building, feel welcome. But I think it's mostly about the education of what they should expect when they get there. There are obviously horror stories, right? They're shared, historically passed on, and we try to mitigate that by being very intentional with what we share with our 8th graders as we prepare them to move on to the 9th grade and beyond. And we do that through school counseling. We do it through, our IEP meetings whenever we're helping to transition students with IEPs. And so it is an intentional effort to try to understand what Dr. Hibbner and her team are doing. And then we try to relay that message and say, they're not so scary up there. It's actually a really great place. So it's an education to both the students and the parents, and it's ongoing all throughout the year. But we do hit it hard here coming up because we're going to start talking about scheduling. And so that's a big part of our 8th graders school year. And so this gives us the opportunity to help them understand what to expect at NAI.
Yes. Thank you.
Good enough? Okay.
And the only other comment is I am so pleased that we are focusing on growth and not achievement. And also Ms. Hardy stole my question and Mr. Weniger about talking about those subgroups, because our mission as North Allegheny is preparing all students for success in a changing world. It's not just the kids in this bucket up on this end of the spectrum or over here or the one, it is all our students, whether they fall into one of those subgroups or wherever they are in the achievement spectrum, we want them all to grow. So it's one of my favorite parts about this strategic plan. And so I really appreciate all the work you guys have done in that area. And I think we are ready to move on to goal number 2.
Okay, good evening. Mr. Cox and I have the pleasure of overseeing the work of goal 2, which I think from an outset, to echo your words, Mrs. Warner, about preparing all students for success in a changing world, I don't think we can do that without also preparing our staff. So just as we're transparent with the public about the growth and the opportunities we have in the area of learning and development of our students, certainly important. It's so important. It should be goal number 1. I'm really proud that goal number 2 focuses on the continuous learning of our staff, because I don't think we can achieve goal 1 without that. And so unlike goal 1, this measures the continuous learning of staff, but we didn't have necessarily a baseline last year because a lot of the metrics for goal 2 and continuous learning come from the staff survey. And last year was the first year we initiated sort of a homegrown staff survey. Before I came to the district, they used to outsource that to a third party. And it really wasn't, it was focused on generalities. And I think having read a lot of it, focused a lot on some areas you may look at for, corporate learning and corporate responses for employees, which is great. But this survey we did focused really on how our staff feel best prepared for a lot of different topics, but that focused on our balanced scorecard. So that staff survey rolled out last spring, and we're pleased to present that data. So it's a little different than some of the other goals. Our baseline is largely in this school year. We were the not applicable year last year. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Cox, but the transparent and accountability as it relates to staff.
So KPI 2.1, I want to point out that when we're talking about subgroups of students, I think it's also important for us to identify that we have subgroups of employees. And this goal says for all employees. And a lot of times when people that don't work in a school district think of employees, they think just teachers. But we have more than just teachers, and we wanted to capture to make sure and provide meaningful and relevant professional development for all employee groups within the organization. So we broke those down into these different baseline groups, and the data is shown there. And kind of our next steps in this, and the data that is shown there is a perfect example of exactly what we were looking for. Our paraprofessional group only reported a 55%. And so our next steps will be, well, why does that subgroup of employees, they really don't feel that they've been given that meaningful and relevant PD, and what do they need? So that will be the next steps in that group.
All right, for KPI 2.2, it's to identify, provide, and track all mandated training for district staff. What was surprising when we took a look at this goal was, to be transparent and frank, we didn't track all the mandated training in one collective effort. So there were different pieces and parts around the district that handled certain regulated training, but to be perfectly transparent, we created a spreadsheet and a tool that said, what are the mandated trainings? Not just all the trainings we do, it's the ones that are mandated and regulated, that we would be held accountable if someone said, hey, why aren't you doing this? You're supposed to do this every 3 years. You're supposed to do this every 2 years. So we sort of drew a line in the sand and said, let's look back at the previous year and see how we did. So we listed out all the mandatory trainings and chased data around the district. But as a result of that, we were able to collect a baseline number and now have what I would share realistically is a grand opportunity for improvement with our baseline number of 73.57% of compliance with mandatory training. So we already are at work this school year. Our KPI leader in this and the KPI team is working hard. Admittedly, they have had some personnel changes on there. So Mr. Cox and I have been more heavily involved, and also Ms. Dabda has been a great help in this district. But the other KPI teams, especially Mrs. Guest's team and Mrs. Hudson's team, have helped out in this area as well. And I do anticipate great improvement next year for this. It's one I think we're really going to shine. If I could, look into the future.
KPI 2.3 is provide targeted learning opportunities to unlock best practices and innovative strategies, equipping our employees to prepare our students for a dynamic world. So again, baseline data collected through the staff survey. We had 61.5% for admin, 71% for professionals. And the next step is to implement the identified targeted learning opportunities. I think a lot of the work that was done was trying to identify what is best practices, what are innovative practices. Now that we've identified it and have gotten the baseline data, now it's time to get to work to get those numbers up.
For KPI goal 2.4, Chief Harpster leads this team. And this is to examine, based on the staff survey and staff impressions, whether we're providing ongoing training to ensure all staff are confident in responding to emergencies. And we were very pleased with the results in this area. As Mr. Cox pointed out, there are, by putting it by different staff subgroups, you can target what staff maybe need more training or, maybe have questions about the training they received. So this was a really great opportunity with the staff survey to find out how we're doing in this area. And the numbers reflect a really positive reaction from our staff about feeling about the preparedness.
2.51 is provide relevant training to K-8 staff to facilitate recognizing each K-8 building as an Apple distinguished school. And the end goal is Apple designation. But for this year, for the actual results, we have 2 school districts that have kind of started and engaged in the process of moving forward for Apple Distinguished Schools. We will have a third joining that team in about 2 weeks from now. We have created an 8-step, process that is going to define how each of these buildings can continue to move forward and how we will measure progress on this goal. So right now, we have 2. The others will be joining here. It is a 2-year process to take that entire journey at minimum. So we will expect some more green dots here in the future, and we are fine-tuning that process and continuing to provide that professional development to those 2 buildings, and the third building that will have the green dot very soon.
Good, next one, too.
2.52 is provide targeted training to 9 to 12 staff to become accepted and actively participate in local, regional, and/or nationally recognized professional organizations that embody innovative educational practices. So for this year, we spent a considerable amount of time, months worth of work, going through and doing some work on activities that led us to an application and eventual acceptance into the League of Innovative Schools. So that actually gets a check mark. The League of Innovative Schools is going to open up a boatload of opportunities for us as North Allegheny students to join school districts across the country and doing large initiatives, large objectives, and providing that professional development across the board for all of our schools. So we were really excited to get a check mark on that acceptance on the League of Innovative Schools.
Okay, turning our attention to our strengths. While a newly measured goal, it hasn't been one that has not been paid attention to, and we certainly have that reflected in the results. So as I mentioned, Mr. Cox and I worked on a template to organize, track, and collect evidence for completion of state mandated trainings as a baseline for future refinement of KPI Goal 2.2. Our very targeted focus on this, I think, also got some recognition from the state and the many individuals we called to verify that it was in fact mandated training and who gets it, because it depends on what phone it gets picked up that day, on what answer you get on some of this. So I think that when North Allegheny looking at it has caused the state to turn their attention to some of it to be more clear in some of the training recommendations they put out. So that was a good strength. The second bullet we highlighted was what Mr. Cox just mentioned. Being accepted into the League of Innovative Schools was, to put it mildly, a very big deal. Having that at the beginning of the school year was a nice kickoff to our year for our staff and also our students. And we look definitely to the future work of our participation in the league and also its influence on Goal 2 to be able to meet those innovative initiatives and goals and be more collaborative and participate with other districts in finding out the best ways we can advance our students. The third highlight we have is our technology upgrades that were completed last school year. The 24-25 school year saw a lot of work from our tech services team, facilities, and our staff in other areas to position our K through 8 buildings to go for that Apple designated or Apple Distinguished School designations. Would note that Marshall Elementary School has taken the lead in the ADS journey for the 24-26 school year. Hozak is also on the path there, and other schools I know are not far behind. And it's led in part by some of the work that was done last year to get everybody ready for this.
Some opportunities for improvement. Our KPI teams 2.1 through 2.3 will work with a restructured learning and development team to achieve gains in professional development, compliance, relevance, and best practice. We have a lot of fresh faces with good ideas, and they're going to bring a lot to the table. And we're looking forward to getting all those minds together, kind of restructuring things in the way that we want this district to move forward, and that will lead to success in 2.1 through 2.3. We also want to ensure that all K through 8 buildings have a plan to begin the Apple Distinguished School. We're seeing that begin, but we need to keep on that, because while this is a 5-year plan, Apple Distinguished takes 2 years, and that gives our runway. We have a short runway. So while a question that may arise later is why aren't all of them going, the buildings have to be ready to do that. And we have already given every building a staff survey. And if the building doesn't feel they're ready, we want to get them to that point before they start that journey. So while they have a little bit of grace period, we have to ensure that they're ready to launch so that they can fit it in that 2-year window. And then also, we want to make sure we maximize the participation in the League of Innovative Schools opportunities to utilize the benefit of the membership to promote district-wide embodiment of innovative education practices. One of the things that Dr. Highland and I were asked on the call with the league when we were doing our interview for our application is they didn't want members that hung the banner on the wall. They want active participants. And one of the things that we need to do and make sure this opportunity is in front of us, we need to use it. And that ends goal 2, and we will open the floor up to any questions.
Thank you both. Any questions from the board? I just want to say I really appreciate how you broke it down by employee classification. Could you give us a little refresher on the difference or what a confidential employee is and a classified employee?
Sure. Please choose. Do you want me to take this one, Jim?
Yep.
Okay. Confidential employees are kind of behind the scenes employees who may work more in operations. That's finance, human resources, tech services. There are some student services employees in that realm as well. And the classified employees are a big group. The classified employees, as you'll note, even on the meaningful and relevant learning and development on 2.1, didn't score that great. And what we realized with those groups, they're your bus drivers, your facilities employees, and other employees who don't work behind a desk. So we realized that some of the training that's offered by examining this and saying, gosh, why is that number so low? Or why is their staff survey number low? Or why is their compliance low? It's because we may not be teaching in the right way. So the work of these KPI teams is to identify some opportunities for especially our classified employees, because they also don't participate in our traditional in-service days. You know, we have an in-service coming up on January 19th that is highlighted for our professional employees. And forgive me, I don't remember if any paraprofessionals are involved in that one. If not, they're the one in April. But our other employees don't. However, Mr. Mergen is hosting an in-service day because there's no school that day for his bus drivers. So we're going to take advantage of that. Dr. DeLuca and I are taking the roadshow to the transportation department that day to try to get some of the mandatory training that we realized they're not taking at the computer. So that's why I said I have a really good feeling that the mandatory compliance number is going to go up next year because we're paying attention to the fact that now we've broken it down by the job classes you've noted. We better do something about it.
Ms. Tracy, could you also go to 2.4 for those folks that may be listening? I got A's and B's in math, but when you look at all, it's 90%. And each classification, when you do the math, it does an average of 90. Could you tell everybody why it's 90%?
That math is mathing. But I was prepped for this because you and I both scratched our heads and said, how are we at 90 when unfortunately our classified employees are at 65? It's because the professional employees who make up the majority of our employees are at 93.72. I don't remember middle school math, and I would look to our middle school team to let me know, is that the mean, not the average, or there's some where I was supposed to learn it, and I did, I assure you. I don't know it now, but it's a different way to measure because you measure by the size of the classification. So for our administrative group, scored off the charts, but they're still not numbered higher than classification, which has about 100 facilities employees and 100 bus drivers. So that number pulls you down a little bit. So even though they didn't answer the survey in large numbers, the ones who did let us hear it. So that's why that looks a little skewed. Overall, I think our professional and paraprofessional employees are carrying that number up over 90.
Ms. Hardy.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. I'm sorry you asked for comments before and I didn't raise my hand. I just wanted to say how excited I am to see the results of the staff survey included here, how important it is, I think, that the district listens to its own people and works to improve the workplace for everyone who works so hard to educate our students and do everything that our district asks of them. So really looking forward to seeing improvements here, and I hope our staff feel heard and listened to, and we do our very, very best to meet their needs. Thank you.
If I could respond to that, even though it wasn't a question, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because professionally, I've often said, don't do a survey unless you're going to do something about it. The worst thing you can do is have staff survey. They answer, they respond thoughtfully, even if it may not be the response you want to hear. It's the one you probably anticipated. If you don't listen to that and don't do something about it, then that survey really is useless. And it also impacts morale in a very negative way because staff feel like, why did I bother? So I am encouraged that we are publicly advertising this, and certainly are taking it back to our departments and doing something about it, because it brings me hope that staff feel not just that they were able to say something, but that we heard them. So thank you for pointing that out.
And Ms. Tracy, I want to thank you for your response to my previous question. You know, I was really kind of a basic, like, how are these two different categories defined? But I'm really excited about how you talked about noticing that these certain groups aren't getting the professional development they need, and that you're already thinking about ways to improve that. And so I really appreciate this breakdown. I don't know who has 2.3, but I see administration isn't exactly pleased with their targeted learning opportunities. And I'm hopeful that, you know, we're all looking at all these things where certain groups are not giving good marks on these surveys, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results. I'm looking forward to the grand opportunity, and so that we can see that improvement next year.
So 2.3 is Miss Hudson, and I don't want to steal her thunder, but oftentimes when training happens, administrators aren't the ones that it's targeted to, because our in-service day, our administrators are preparing everything for our staff, and so sometimes we often forget that those folks need, that subgroup needs to be on the list of people who receive trainings, and finding time for administrators to do that is also a challenge.
I would note too, while we have most of our administrative team here as a captive audience, I think too, when some training is delivered, in defense of the folks who put it together, I'm looking at Dr. Frohnapfel right there, who has trained us several times at ILT meetings. I think we forget sometimes that when a training is received during an otherwise business meeting, that it was training. It wasn't just a meeting that we went to. So I think we need to do a better job of reminding ourselves that we did receive that, because I learn all the time, especially when you bring prizes too. So that's nice. But we receive it. I just don't think we realize we receive it. But to, the point of this KPI, and what Mrs. Hudson is doing with her team is working also with the KPI goal 2.1 led by Mrs. Kami Guess, making sure it's relevant and what people want to hear. So we might give it, but is it what, most of the faces here would like to hear about? Is it what you want to learn? So I think that's part of what Carla and Tommy are working with on their teams or KPI teams to say, hey, if it's not landing, what will? What do you want to learn about? So, it's been a really reflective year.
I think the specifics of the big innovation and really what we're talking about Magic School and what of the AI and the AI committees, parts of it. So there's lots of things that Dr. Carey, always their name always does for us in regards to ensuring compliance, but especially in regards to our campus rollout and a lot of the things that we are doing and ensuring our teachers are doing, we're trying to model within our schools for our buildings and for our parents and for our students as well. So I think overall, technology and innovation, the things that we're asking our students to do, especially with the targets of AI this year, I hope that will our scope increase.
Thank you. I really appreciate that you guys have all been thinking about this, because our administrators, you're our leaders and you do so much work for the students in this district, and we appreciate it. And so you all deserve to have targeted learning opportunities that meet your needs. So I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing that number improve. And then anyone else on this goal? Dr. Adams.
I think the math thing was a weighted mean. Just wanted to throw that out there.
So I was close with mean. I was like, is it median? Is it mean? I was guessing. Thank you.
Okay. I think we can move on to goal number 3.
Hi, we have the goal number 3. Dr. Frohnapfel and I share the goal, but we also share it with our superintendent, Dr. Highland, who is going to report on his first 2 KPIs.
This is a progress report on the board and the administrators. This goal, I think, is probably, it's to our students, it's probably one of the most meaningful goals, because it's empowering and listening to students, and to ensure that our administrators are working and meeting and listening to what students have to say is a very big deal. And not only that, but having our board members actually take time out of their day to go and sit with elementary students, with middle school students, with high school students. I recall at the end of last year, I think we had 4 board members and 4 administrators sitting down with a group of about 60 high school students and just sitting there and listening to what they had to say about their experiences in school. These KPIs are they're compliance based. You have to hit so many per semester, and the board did that. I thank you for doing that. We're going to measure whether you do it this year or not and report out. So clear your schedules, make sure you get there. But I feel really good about this because we are getting really good feedback from our students. They feel as though I think that they're being heard, and I think it's being reflected in our surveys. And it may not seem like a big thing that a board member comes and speaks with a kid, but I can assure you that it is. So I thank you for the time that you've put in. So with 3.1 and 3.2, we've hit that goal, and quite frankly, we should hit that target every single year. So that should be a layup.
Thank you, Dr. Highland. I would also add, I was going to share that I think this goal is so unique because the board is able to participate in the goal itself, unlike some of the other goals. So when you look at goal 3.1, the KPI leader for that is Dr. Maines, and we are looking at establishing the, did that switch over?
3.3.
3.3. Yeah,
There we go, 3.3. I was like, that does not look right. 3.3 is increasing the number of students in grades 6 through 12 that participate in either an activity or a club. And this I found rather inspirational, if you will, because the percentages there of the number of students that are participating in either a club or an activity, we know that child's educational experience will be better because of participating in either a club or an activity. So you can see several met the target. Others are moving and increasing those results to get to that target. And really all of the numbers up there are, to me, are very, very positive. And I think, we look to continue to find ways to have the students identify whether they're in a club or an activity. I do know from speaking with some of our KPI leaders that one of the issues that we had between baseline and now was that some of our students didn't understand that they were in clubs or activities. They just were in them and they never thought of it as a club or an activity. I do still think sometimes that's a part of it, especially with the younger children. But we are going to continue to work with Dr. Maines and her team to come up with ideas that we can use to move forward. 3.4 is increasing the percentage of students who feel a connection to their school. This for me is just very, it's everything, right? Your students work for you when you have a connection with them. The KPI leader here has changed just because of staffing. And just like Mr. Cox said, we are now getting some fresh ideas to try to move that in a more positive direction. Our numbers look good. We have several that met the target. We have several that are increasing, and we had a couple that just backslid just a little, not a lot. Again, one of the conversations that I have when I'm asking administrators in buildings, I think I just asked Carla today, why do you think that is? Like, why? Like, what is, and again, I think some children, from the middle school perspective, you could be asking them on a day where they just do not like you. It could be the day, the mood, you're catching that in a survey. And I still think for the younger ones, what does it mean to feel a connection? And I think when we work a little harder around them understanding that concept, we may see the results improve. But Ms. Vanderzee has come up with a very, very structured plan of how we can connect better with our children. And it looks like how we greet them It looks like how we celebrate recognize and celebrate, and anything extracurricular. So trying to focus and pinpoint more on what exactly can we do differently to try to connect, because not everybody connects the same way. So that's kind of where we are with that. Can you switch the slide? So I would say our strengths are all 3 middle schools met the target for students involved in at least one activity or club. Both high schools increased performance for students involved in at least one activity or club. BWE, HES, and PES all met the target for students feeling connected with school. And kudos to BWE, because that increased the largest by 20.95. And HOSAC had an increase of 8.2, and so did Peebles at 7.49. Franklin, Carson, NAI, and Nash were all demonstrating progress. And I mean, we want to keep moving forward, so we feel that we did a good job there.
Next slide, please, Catherine. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about opportunities for improvement. I do just want to acknowledge that I don't typically sit in this chair or on this side of the space. So thank you for the opportunity. Also, I appreciate the opportunity of being included in goal number 3, because I do, like Dr. DeLuca said and Dr. Hyland, this is, to me, just the most powerful. So we do recognize those opportunities for improvement. Dr. DeLuca talked a little bit about what Ms. Vanderzee is doing. And really what we're looking at is supporting these specific buildings that had that little bit of a backslide to increase the number of students. And so we're really looking at planful, purposeful activities in these 3 categories. So like we said, greeting students at the door, the recognition celebrations that we're doing through our PBIS efforts, our positive behavior interventions and supports efforts, and then extracurricular activities. The other thing that we wanted to take a look at is focusing on improving club participation in our high schools. And so we have to do some things. I think one of the things that you've heard as a theme are helping students really understand what the definitions of some of these things are. Like, what does it mean to feel connected to school? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it mean to participate in an activity or a club? And having those conversations with our students. But even thinking about club participation, what do the clubs look like and sound like? Where do we have holes? Where are there opportunities for some more diverse offerings? And how can we intentionally and planfully do that? And I think we have a great opportunity in 3.1 and 3.2 for asking our students what they might need. And then another great opportunity in 3.3 and 3.4 to actually impact those numbers. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. And we'll take any questions.
Yes.
Any questions? Ms. Weidman?
I just want to add a little piece on 3.3, the clubs and activities, only because I spent a lot of time with that raw data. And while the numbers are very high for participation, mostly in the 90s, it captured one student in one activity. But what I found is most students who participated in at least one thing were actually in 3, 4, 5, some were up in the 10s. So that those numbers to me are actually higher than are represented on this survey. And I just think it's such a positive thing. It's worth noting.
Thank you, Ms. Weidman. Dr. Gibbs.
Yes, thank you. So I also had a question about 3.3 as well. So it's interesting to me that the numbers of students that that are participating in activities went up in every school. And I'm just curious, do you think that's because they didn't realize, like you said, they didn't realize they were doing these things before and now they do? Or was there something intentional that was done this past year to get students to become more involved? So maybe you could.
Well, and Dr. Maines can speak to that too. So go ahead.
Carla can go first. I think it's both. I think it's being intentional with the action plan. So we had our action plan set and we made sure that kids were exposed to clubs with activities fairs, making sure we checked in with kids to see what we were missing, you know, as when we have our PAC meetings with the principals, talking to them, is there a certain kind of club that you would be interested in? So I do think it's trying out the action plan, working through the action plan, reflecting on the action plan. So I do think it was that, but I also do think it was partially giving them like, what is a club? And Project Waters, our big dodgeball thing, like that is a club. That's an activity. That's a thing that they participate in. They think it's fun, but they don't realize it's an activity. So just trying to define that. I think it's both.
Anyone else? Yeah, Mrs. Light.
I apologize for not knowing this. When does this survey go out?
Historically, it has been May. This year, in order to increase participation, we're going to try and move it up to April.
So are these kids, so they receive an email and their parents are walking them through it?
Well, there's the survey, but there's also a student survey. I know Mr. DeRamo can talk a little bit about the student survey, the activity survey that goes out. I'm sorry, I thought you meant the student
I'm just
survey.
I'm just wondering how the students are prepped for it, because if you're asking a elementary school elementary school child how they feel connected to their school, or you might have one parent sitting there explaining this is what connection is, and you might have another parent who isn't really helping them understand what the questions are.
Right, and I think that's what we learned from the first year. I think it was teaching the students about the vocabulary used and what that means. So rigorous curriculum is a really good example, where we realized we needed as a school to explain to the students what that is. A lot of our principals at the elementary level, trusted adults was something else. The students didn't know what that meant, but when you break it down and say, do you feel comfortable going to someone if you fell on the playground or whatever that could be? And I think putting it in elementary terms for them and breaking it down was the school's job. And I think that's why we saw an improvement in some of this, was just the kids understanding what they were answering. Because they take the survey in school, they don't take the survey at home.
So they're prepped for this, like they're understanding what they're being asked.
Correct. And I will tell you, like the principals, someone may have had one of their goals be around trusted adults. They had an action plan to really address what that meant. So they were talking to the students. They were, doing activities around what is a trusted adult and building on that throughout the year.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yep.
Okay.
Anyone else? I just would like to thank all of the principals for welcoming us board members into your buildings. It was a really great learning opportunity for me. I'm sure it was for the group of us. And I especially wanted to thank McKnight and Marshall Middle School, because they welcomed me for an entire day. And I learned a lot about being a second grade teacher, and that second graders are a lot. It's been a long time since I had little ones like that age. And so it was a great refresher for me to see what it looks like to educate kids in that age group. And I was in Marshall Middle School this fall. And my big takeaway from that was, because I followed someone their whole schedule the whole day, and to see all how many different teachers they see. There are like 8 different teachers in a middle school day, and just how every teacher was different, but every teacher had their way of making a connection with their students while simultaneously delivering the content. And it was great to see all the different ways that different teachers did that. So that's just kind of an example of what I learned from that opportunity. And so I really appreciate all of you welcoming us and allowing us to do that. And does anyone else have anything on goal 3? All right, then we are ready to move on to goal 4.
All right, goal 4, facilities for the future. And I just want to start off by reading just the first part of goal 4, which is invest in the maintenance and development of facilities and the grounds that create future-ready learning spaces. So goal number 1 is increase the number of future-ready learning spaces district-wide. And you can see last year we didn't have an actual or baseline. Really, the goal this year was to create a baseline. And creating a baseline for the number of future-ready learning spaces, we first had to define what one was. And when you walk into a room, a learning space, if it's future-ready, and if it's not, that it's not. But how do you quantify it and how do you measure it was really the KPI 4.1 team really spent a lot of time on. And so we came up with a metric to measure all the rooms and spaces, and we determined that we had 185 future-ready spaces out of 605 learning spaces. And we noticed that a lot of them were at the newly renovated schools. Then we had to come up with a metric to say, okay, what's the target of this? You can't just go from 185 to 600 because it may not make sense in some of them. You don't have a lot of capital to invest in all that. You have to take a look at what future construction is planned, et cetera. So really that first one, that 4.1 for the current year was really defining what we had and where we want to go for a target. And again, the target to increase baseline by 40% is, we feel, is a reachable stretch goal based on capital outlay, upcoming construction, et cetera. So that's really 4.1. 4.2, establish and sustain an elevated completion rate of the annual planned capital projects. This is based on the annual capital funding plan of approved projects. We wanted to get that above 90% completion rate. We were at 86% baseline. Over the course of the last year, we hit 95% from the facilities team. 4.3, improve facilities operational performance by ensuring proper balance between preventative and corrective maintenance. And if you recall, over the previous couple years, it was almost flipped. We were doing more corrective maintenance versus preventative maintenance, and we were trying to get on a schedule. We were more aligned with standards 70-30. I believe it's 70-30, 80-20 is a good target for preventative maintenance versus corrective maintenance. And you'll see in 24-25, we hit the 78 and 22 ratios. Going to 4.4, ensure timely preventative maintenance within prescribed windows. We were at 31.8%. It did improve to 62%. We're not quite at our target yet, but we're working on building towards there. And then 4.5, increase the percentage of students and parents that strongly agree that our facilities and grounds for academics, athletics, and arts and activities are clean and in good condition. And you'll see in most of these, we've either achieved that or are growing. We do have a couple that are declining, but still have already met the target there at a very high level. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Shabola to go through some of the strengths and areas for opportunities in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. So going over some of our strengths, looking at the first goal for 4.1, we scored that we had 185 of our classrooms that were future ready. We're glad to see that, and we did, as Mr. Hauser indicated, that's a lot of our rooms that are already buildings that are renovated, or classrooms that we're doing the pilots in right now, or the teachers that have taken the initiatives to get that furniture into their classrooms and make them so they're flexible and met the standards that we set. Moving on to the next strength is we completed 95% of our approved capital projects. You would think if we had 20 projects, why don't we just complete 20? There's a lot of variables and things that happen from the time we present in October to the time we get them completed, hopefully by end of summer the following year. So I'm proud to see that. I want to see us hit 100% just by vetting the projects ahead of time. I'm spending more time in them, make sure that they're properly aligned to move forward with, and just basically vetting them out the best we can so we can get to that 100% completion. Looking at the CM, or the preventive maintenance over corrective maintenance, like Kermit, Mr. Hauser said that we want 70% preventive and 30% corrective. I felt that was a pretty tall goal, and I'm pretty proud to say that we've hit it. Mr. Postrich and his maintenance team has worked very hard at this, making sure that the information is being put into the work order system is good information and valid, and they're being held accountable. Back in July of 24, we had 1,200 open work orders, and as of December, we were down to 295, and Mr. Postrich shared with me today we're down to 277 now. For a district our size, that's pretty impressive. We have about 6,500 work orders throughout the year, so I'm pretty happy to see that. Even though we've doubled the percentage of our preventive maintenance work orders being completed on time, we've also doubled the amount of preventive maintenance that we're doing. A year ago, we only did about 1,100 preventive maintenance work orders, and now we're close to 2,200 now, and that's still increasing. And then looking at goal 4.5, we've either achieved our target or increased in 11 of our 12 buildings for just based on the survey for cleanliness and condition of them. Moving to the next slide for our opportunities for improvement. We're implementing a new work order system. The one we currently had gave us some challenges with properly being able to report out, being able to look more granular at the buildings, at the staff, to make sure they're properly proper amounts of workload, not overloaded, a lot of that. So we're really looking forward to getting this fully rolled out here in the next few months. Training. This actually goes back to goal 2. We're doing a lot with revamping the training for a lot of the staff. We've always done an annual all-day training in the summertime. A lot of it covers the mandatory training, and then we'd sprinkle in some of the other training throughout the year. We're going to try and flip that, get the mandatory training throughout the year during our PD days that teachers are utilizing as well. And then during the summer, we're going to bring in some more targeted training for the staff to help them improve, not just custodians, but also maintenance and grounds. One example is for like the custodians, we're working with a vendor and the manufacturer to come in to help provide training for the complete day, which will be great. That the continued training for custodial staff, I kind of talked about that, and considering other ways to improve cleanliness in 3 buildings this year. We already changed the cleaning methods and tools that we used. Went from the old cotton string mop to a microfiber flat mop, changing those heads and the towels for every classroom so you're not doing cross-contamination between classrooms to help, especially during this time of year with the cold and flu season. Looking at just how we implement walk-off mats to help keep the building cleaner, especially at our athletic areas, because if we can get all the dirt and salt off their shoes on the walk-off mats, it's not going onto the gym floor. It's causing it to be slippery and could be hazardous for our athletes. And then this summer, we're working on implementing team cleaning into our schools. Most likely it'll be started in elementary schools. We're still working on the full plan of that, but we'll bring in, instead of each building custodians being responsible for their own building, we're going to lump them together and mass clean one building at a time. It'll help raise our standards, get them done quicker, and help eliminate a lot of worries with staffing when they want to take off in the summertime with using vacation and stuff like that. Does anybody have any questions?
Dr. Gibbs.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question for about 4.1, Mr. Hauser. So you said that you go into a space and you know it, or it's future ready, or you know that it's not. So I'm not sure that I would know. So could you just tell us, I'm going to ask this 2 ways. Either give us a few characteristics that would identify something that's future ready. At the same time, it sounds like there are about 400 spaces that are not future ready. So what is it that they're missing that makes them not future ready?
Do you want to take this? I mean, no. Oh, you're
Directors,
next to you.
no, I could do it as well.
You're 4.5?
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
You're 4.5.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey guys, who's on first?
Really, it's Mr. Andrzejak, but no, not very often I get a microphone at these meetings. But yeah, a lot of what we said too was really defining that. What does future ready look like? What does that look like in North Allegheny? But what does that look like district, countrywide? And so we came through. I pulled it up on my phone. We broke it down. Just some of those things: Wi-Fi, mounted display boards, limited wires exposed in the classrooms, access to technology devices, 3D printers, a variety of technology tools, smart lighting. Again, when we look at that, we have it all in a spreadsheet. You can break it down by elementary school. You can break it down by middle school. You can see that the newer schools that have been renovated have much higher scores. We worked very closely with Tori and with Jim to look at all the new line boards going into all the classrooms in the elementary levels. So we really had to take a lot of time. We did flexible seating to really define what that looks like. We have a beautiful rubric, matrix scores. We went into between the team, Mrs. Hudson, Matt, who else am I missing? I know Tori did a lot. Going into really every instructional classroom in each of our buildings to really go through with this score sheet and look and say, check, 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 1 point, 2 point, 3 points for each of those things. So it took a lot of time, but really to define that really well.
Yeah, good evening. It was a really neat, I guess, day where Tori and I toured Nash and looked at every classroom and kind of just reflected on where we are as a school, particularly the senior high, and some different ideas that we have to have more opportunities for students to be more collaborative. Because right now, we're a lot of, I guess our seats are in rows and whatnot, but we're starting to slowly implement the change. We're starting to gain some more momentum with our teachers who want that flexibility. So it's a neat approach for us to reflect on our current learning environments.
Just a quick follow-up. So a couple of things you mentioned are electronic boards and Wi-Fi. I'm assuming that nearly all, if not all, of our educational spaces have at least one electronic board and Wi-Fi. So it sounds like the things that are missing are the other things that you mentioned. And I have to think about how those other things impact learning in those spaces.
And it's one thing I'd like to also add, and some of it we're finding, a lot of it's the furniture. Some of it, we still have the chair and desk, it's one unit. They're not very conducive to being flexible and moving around the groups and individual and stuff like that. One of the pilots that we did was actually at Ingomar Middle, Miss Hudson's school, was with Franklin Interiors and Steelcase Furniture. They, to help back our information up, so it's not just us saying that this is future ready. And we researched this on our own, but then Steelcase has a LEES survey that they do. They've done it worldwide, 20,000 surveys, I can't remember the number now, but it's a pre-survey, so the students and the teachers, that classroom are surveyed on how the environment of the classroom is, how do students feel they're engaged. And I can't remember all the questions off the top of my head now. But then they'd also do it post 6 weeks, I think it was 6 weeks after the furniture was put in. And to see those results, it was pretty amazing. And then being in the room several times, talking to the kids, talking to the teacher, with how it's changed the classroom. And now instead of them being in rows, they could start out in rows, but then the teacher's telling the kids, okay, move. And there's actually posters on the wall, different configurations. And she'll say, like, go to this configuration. The students move, and then they start doing their collaborative work. So it's really impressive to see it happening and to have that additional information support what we're working for.
Dr. Gibbs, if I could just add one thing. I think what we should do on this particular KPI, as we have done, let's say for the Pittsburgh Business Times or how the AP determines, how that metric is determined, I think we should also hyperlink that on that particular KPI on 4.1 so that people understand what is the definition of a future ready space, so that it is more clearly articulated so that people clearly understand what it is.
I think it's in terms of how that's described, I think it has to do with the functionality of the room and how it supports different types of learning strategies, right? So it's not just the furniture, but how the furniture can be used in ways that support specific types of learning strategies.
Anyone else on goal 4? Dr. Adams.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. I have a question for you, Dr. Hyland, on what I would call goal 4.x. And the short preamble is, I'm very impressed with the whole team, with your work, the granularity, the detail, and I can appreciate the effort. And it's an honor to be here. We picked this district, moved here 5 years ago from Reno, Tahoe. The academics and athletics were off the chart as a combination. And my question for 4.x is, why isn't there, or could there be, maybe with your Super Bowl analogy, an overtime goal or a overtime rule change. A goal or a KPI to talk about financial strength, some kind of a hybrid a KPI that combined total debt, the state limited savings you're allowed to have, and requesting that the NA Foundation consider a legacy fund, something giant to help weather the storms for the next 10 to 50 years and make this the best school district that it could ever be. Some kind of financial strength to support facilities for the future. Is it too late to add a KPI to that effect under goal 4? Is that something that would have to wait for 2029? Is there a reason why you think we shouldn't add it? And just while you think about that for a second, because I'm just throwing that out as a question, it's related to goal 3. I thought of 2 there. One would be a KPI related to the arts, and one would be one related to athletics. I was looking for where that is in the 5 scorecard, and I didn't see it. So I thought, well, maybe that's empowering students, and you could measure scholarships in college, signing to college, competition awards, state titles, local titles across athletics and arts, and have 2 KPIs, one for each, to make sure we're focusing on keeping those 2 areas strong. So I'm asking why those 3 aren't there, and could they be added now or later? And giving that to you as a question / request.
Sure, thank you. What I would say, Dr. Adams, is that we have, as a collective group, the members of the existing members of this board worked with the former members of the board to come up with a comprehensive strategic plan, which takes an awful lot of work to be able to do that. And oftentimes there are things that it's hard to put every single thing that everybody wants into that plan. And so we had to pick and choose certain things about what our priorities were. And by definition, something always gets left out. That being said, the state says, after 3 years of doing your plan, you can go back and you have to look at your plan and say, hey, do you want to make any changes to that plan? I think at that time, it's probably a good idea, being that you would be a new board member and get an opportunity to not only hear from your fellow board members, but also other members of the community being involved. And then at that time, sure, the board could make that change. I would recommend wait till that line of demarcation.
It's next year.
We got 1 more year after this, yes. That would be my recommendation. It doesn't mean we have to, and you could be just one person of 9 that says that we do that. That would be a discussion that we'd have to have collectively as a group to make that determination.
Okay.
I would say that, and I would say the other thing too is we always want to get better at what we do. There's no question about that. But we also don't want to move the target on the people that are responsible for trying to hit the targets that we have. And so sometimes when that happens and when there's changes, we have to be flexible, but we also have to be mindful of we've put in motion a lot of things to be able to hit some of these targets. And when you add a new one on there, it could delay some of the progress that we have on the targets we've already established. I hope that makes sense.
That's really helpful, actually. And I guess I'd make an official request for everyone in this room to consider for a year from now to see if we can't add the arts and athletics as something we can measure along the lines of something I suggested. Perhaps there'd be a much better way to do it, and financial strength. I'm just making that request because I think that would help bolster everything you're doing, and I think you could tuck them into goal 3 and 4. I'll just leave it there as a request to think about then.
Duly noted.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on goal 4? I was really impressed with that whole flip you did on the preventive maintenance versus the corrective maintenance. And I heard Mr. Posterich's name mentioned several times, so kudos to Mr. Posterich. And now we are ready for goal 5.
All right, goal 5. And just to echo the question or comments regarding those questions or topics are currently addressed in the survey. They just may not have been developed into specific KPI, but the stewardship of the financial aspects of the school district, as well as the academics, athletics, the arts, and we actually have scored very, very high in those areas. So I just want to make sure you know that those questions are presented to the
Thank you.
students
It
and
might
parents.
be an opportunity to shine too. If we got it in as a thought.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing.
Goal 5, on behalf of Chief Harpster, I would also like to take the opportunity to highlight specific 5.1, increase or maintain the percentage of students and parents who strongly agree that their student's school is safe and secure. As you can see, this is an area that the school district shines. The perception and the voice of the student and parent population is very strong in this area. All 12 of our schools met the target of 90% or higher from the baseline year to 24-25. 5.2, increase the percentage of students who feel they have a trusted adult at school. 6 of our 12 schools demonstrated growth, with 5 of 12 meeting the target. I want to echo what we've spoke about earlier in terms of actually defining trusted adult. I think the delivery component to, especially an elementary student, do you have a teacher or an adult in the building that you feel comfortable to going to if you have a problem? They're absolutely, for the most purposes, are going to answer that as a positive, but they may not necessarily know what trusted adult means on a piece of paper without being properly prepped. So we understand that. That will be is part of our plan. I know Tracy's here as well, Michalowski, that is the KPI leader for that, if we have additional questions or comments for that. 5.3, increase the percentage of students and parents who strongly agree that students treat students with respect at school. We have 9 of our 12 schools demonstrating growth, and currently 1 of 12 meeting the target of 90% or higher. So we understand that's an area that we are going to continue to grow in. A lot of our efforts under the PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention Support, in moving forward with Tier 1 and Tier 2 implementation has been successful, and we look for that moving forward. To Dr. Gibbs, your point or question earlier in terms of differences of perception, that is also another area where the parent perception was much higher than what was reported by the students. And I think, not that we know this for sure, but some of the discussions that we had hypothesizing was also that some students were answering not as part of their own experience, but on behalf of their peers. But that's something that we are digging deep into learning more about. 5.4, increase the percentage of students and parents who strongly agree that they would recommend the district to someone moving into Pennsylvania. 10 of 12 of our schools demonstrated growth, with 11 out of 12 meeting the target of 90% or higher. 5.5, increase the percentage of staff who feel they work in a safe environment. This also could be a perception of the work that I'm completing or the work that I'm working, the environment. So those are some of the aspects based on the baseline data that we're going to dig deeper. 13 of the 21 subgroups of the staff survey met that target of 90%. As you could see, transportation is one of the areas that we've highlighted as an area of growth. And I think an earlier question of when the survey is administered, based on the possibility or potential bus driver in May on a Friday, probably not the best day to ask them if they are, working in a safe environment. But we appreciate all the bus drivers getting our kids to and from school safely, especially in May. 5.6, increase the percentage of staff who strongly agree that they would recommend the district to a friend or peer as a good place to work. Subgroup populations, going back to transparency and vulnerability, we have a lot of work to do in this area. And that is something that we will continue to look at as a team. I know the baseline data, Ms. Hudson, I believe, and Mr. Murray, we've talked about identifying specific target groups and staff who are going to work to make intentional efforts, not only to increase the sense of value and appreciation for our staff members, but also us being more intentional about saying thank you and that you are valued. And I think we can all do a better job of that. So thank you.
I would also add in one other thing. When board members during Goal 3, when you have your opportunity to go and speak with students in those subgroups, ask them those questions. Ask them, do you feel like you're challenged, or do you feel like this is a safe environment? That's your opportunity. This is quantitative data, but you have the opportunity to get that qualitative data, at least from a small subgroup of kids, and then the opportunity as you go to different buildings to compare what they're saying. That's what I've found has been helpful for me, is when I go to the schools and we talk about some of the things that are in the survey, or what's some of the KPIs, to find out if it's matching, and I can get more data other than just pure numbers. So, sorry, Mr.
Does anyone have any, Dr. Adams?
I'm just really impressed. So well done to you and your team. As a data guy, there's an unglamorous heavy lift behind the scenes for everything I just saw. And I really appreciate the detail and the discipline. I think this will pay off. And I'm really impressed. Just wanted to say that. Thank you to you all.
On behalf of the administrative team, we were all really nervous tonight. I can tell you, this is the first time we've presented this balanced scorecard. We know we're being vulnerable. On their behalf, I appreciate you recognizing that, and we thank you for that. So thank you.
Mrs. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. So I think 5.3, everybody saw it as pretty troubling, but I also suspect what you said is correct. People are somewhat basing it on something that they heard. And one of the reasons I suspect that's true is we look at 5.4, and if you really felt that people treated people poorly, surely you would not feel like you would recommend the district to someone. So those two things don't really go together, that they would strongly recommend us, and yet. So I think we may have to tweak our survey a little bit and put in it as it pertains to you, and not anything with someone else or that you've heard with someone else, because I would be curious to get some real data on that and see if it's an area that we need to have a lot of improvement on. And I know that we were sent those, but I'll have to look at that question a little more closely in what you sent to us, because probably the thing I'm most excited about is 5.4. It seems like people really think a lot of our district. I know everyone knows I do. So here I am over 50 years later, still in the same spot. And so that I find really exciting and great. And so I think we're going to need to look at the other a little more closely. So great job. And once again, like we've been saying, full transparency for the first time in, I think, all of my years on the board. So I'm thrilled over this. And you have to put out the bad things with the good things, but we're fully transparent. That's a good thing. Thank you.
Mr. Winiger.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is awesome. Congratulations. I know it's a ton of work that goes into not only compiling a report, but even more so actually getting results. It's awesome. And I was just wondering if Dr. Hyland mentioned to you in the really, really, really fine print that is in our strategic plan that if you get check marks in the first year, it automatically kicks up our the goal by 20% for the next year. I don't know if he shared that with you, but that's called the sandbagging.
That's for tomorrow, Mr.
That was called the sandbagging clause we put in. But no, you did. It was awesome. That's great. This is really great. I'm really proud of the district here. Congratulations.
Dr. Gibbs.
Yeah, thank you. I just had one question or comment about 5.6. So it's a little troubling to me that the numbers aren't higher for our employees, and whether or not they would think well enough for our district to recommend to someone else. When I look down, I assume FAC is our facilities employees, right? And I was surprised that only 57%, that number's only 57%. And we put a lot of trust and faith in our facilities employees. And we've invested a lot bringing stuff in-house. And I think they do an amazing job. I mean, people have commented to me how wonderful the properties look and so forth. And I'm just surprised they don't feel more, I don't feel that they're not saying that either they're not appreciated or there's something about their work environment that's bothering them. I don't know what it is, but I think we need to, you mentioned transportation, but we didn't mention the facilities employees. I think we need to figure out what's going on there as well. I would be very disappointed if we got a reputation for not being a good place to work as a facilities employee since we put so much stock in our facilities.
I think once we improve the facilities, they'll have more fun working there. So the upcoming renovation projects should be an exciting opportunity for that. I would also like to just piggyback to the comment too about treating students with respect. And I think that, and I'm also going to let Mr. Thornton, Dr. Thornton, make a few comments as he's the KPI leader. But having the opportunity to have middle school and other administrators in attendance, and my former experience specifically at middle school, where I always jokingly say it's difficult to legislate adolescence. When students are interpreting disrespect or respect and how to quantify that, at times I think they think that means absence of conflict, when in reality we know there's never really going to be a time where there's an absence of conflict. So that's the time where we really put a lot of effort into teaching students, and a lot of our community at times can, kind of see this in action as we live our lives in the world that we're living in now, how to mediate and how to resolve conflict in a productive way. So I think part of the strategy of the action plan is to say, it's okay to disagree. How do you do so with respect and dignity, which I think is also evident that is happening based on the fact that our scores are so high for, moving into the district and recommending it. But Mark, I don't know if you wanted to piggyback off that.
Sure, I can just add a few things, but Mr. Duramo, you already stated a lot of what we already do in the buildings with our PBIS efforts and incorporating a lot of this into our conversations with kids. I even know at the secondary level, they plan a lot of things during the activity periods and the activities that the kids just have in general, peer-to-peer interactions. But to piggyback on the focus groups that we have the superintendent come in, the school board members come in. Some of the things that we've done a little differently is we just don't work with the kids when you show up. We have those opportunities to work with those same kids and other small groups of students to have those conversations. And again, it's more of a qualitative type of discussion. So when we talk to the kids about respect and what does that mean to you, they can talk to you about it. But then they revert back to something that happened in third grade. So you have those experiences, and it does provide a lot of context to their experiences and why they may respond that way. But it's, again, having those conversations with them and educating them on what this word really means, and maybe tweaking the question, but what it's all about and what it means for you. So
I'll add one other thing. Dr. Gibbs, I think it's important that we acknowledge what you said. 57% is not a good number. And if we don't, you can't solve a problem unless you identify the problem. And I think what we have done is we have identified a problem, at least for one round of surveys. I think what's important too is to look at, a trend is 3 data points, right? And so we have one data point, but we have a data point that's not, we don't like that data point. So I think it's important that I acknowledge personally, like I see that is not a good one. So I promise you they're efforting towards that. I think what we have to focus on is we may not get the 90%, but I'll tell you next year, I want to see that higher than that particular number, or we have to look at what we're doing. And I think we have to look at what we're doing with that particular group of folks. So I just wanted to acknowledge your comment.
Anyone else? Ms. Hardy.
I just wanted to echo what everyone else says. It's just tremendously obvious how much effort has been going on in the past year. It's a thrill, an absolute thrill to see how much progress was made just in 1 year. Thank you all so much for being here, for all of your work every day. It's just amazing to see it measured and reported on like this. So really appreciate it, and just quietly acknowledging it's 9 o'clock at night and you all are here after a full day of work and in the middle of winter concert season as well. So thank you all to everyone for everything. Really, really appreciate it.
Dr. Adams?
Yeah, I just thinking through and listening to the closing comments, I agree with everything that was said, and the questions that were asked were very good. The thought came to underscore the 3 KPI requests that I made. Listening to all of this, the excitement of closing the chapter, year 1 data gathered, good, bad, ugly. Next year, let's see where we're at. We are so good at arts and athletics and pretty good financially. If we fail to add KPIs, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I just am underscoring for getting in everyone's mind to think about dialogue for the next year. It would be important to measure athletics, arts, and financial strength, or else I think we're taking them for granted and they could slip. Just putting that out there. Yeah.
Anyone else? I also would like to kind of circle back and talk about 5.3, the students treat each other with respect. And I think it is important to look at not just like how an individual, I don't think this question is or should be just, am I treated with respect? I think we do need to have students weigh in on what the environment is in their school. When I took this survey as a parent, because we have similar questions, I asked one of my students, do students treat each other with respect in your building? And my student went off and listed 4 separate incidents where, this student, she said, I suspect they have an IEP, and this student was made fun of. They were treated differently because of whatever the situation was that led to an IEP. She had listed another student that she thought was LGBTQ and was treated differently. And so I don't think I think we need to be, if we want to relook at this, that's fine, but I think we need to be careful about how we look at it, because I think there is a whole atmosphere, and it's not just how you are treated, it's how people how you see other students treating each other. And sometimes I don't know necessarily that a student is going to speak up for themselves. And so I think we need that, that culture of other people noticing how students are treated in buildings. So I think we need to be careful about what kind of changes we make to that question and what we're actually looking for. And I in particular am interested in this kind of culture of the building and all students, are they treating each other with respect? Even if you're treated with respect, do you see other students not being treated fairly? So that is an important KPI for me.
And just to add to that,
Yeah.
I mean, the respect component, along with trusted adult and the connectedness, all of those things, those are all components that tie in with each other.
Yes. But otherwise, just yes, I'll echo what other people said. This, really thrilled with this whole balanced scorecard in general. I'm thrilled with how the board had worked together to come up with this strategic plan, and how we are, tracking our data, reporting, being transparent, and all the work that all of you have done on it. Thank you so much.
And with that, you could go home.
Yes, please.
If you want to. If you want to stay, you can too.
Okay. Now that we have concluded our reports, we will move on to the student activities report. Ms. Pagnato and Ms. Jin.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. In December, the Nash Architecture Club participated in the 23rd annual Pittsburgh Gingerbread House competition and earned a first place prize while competing against more than 30 area high schools, highlighting the creativity and design skills of its members. Additionally, the NA Ski and Snowboard Club completed registration and finalized preparations for its upcoming trips. Due to high student interest, the club filled 4 buses and established a waitlist, with members ranging from beginner to advanced skill levels. The club has had their first trip to Seven Springs coming up this Friday, January 9th. Students will participate in progressive lessons, utilize equipment rentals, build friendships, and continue developing their skills of skiing and snowboarding. Lastly, the Italian Club held another successful gathering focused on the region of Sicily. Members explored Sicilian culture through hands-on culinary learning by making traditional cannoli from scratch, an activity that was enjoyed by all students in attendance, and continued the club celebration of the region of Italy.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. At their December meeting, German club members built gingerbread houses, sampled real German gingerbread, and sipped on holiday Kinder Punch, a traditional German punch made with fruit juice, tea, and warm spices. They played German music as they worked on their gingerbread houses, which at the end of the meeting were given prizes based on aesthetics, height, creativity, and Germanness. Additionally, members also received their club t-shirts and took a group picture for the yearbook. Overall, it was an amazing wrap to 2025, and they're looking forward to their next meeting in January, where they are planning on baking something German together. The cold and snow cannot slow NAI Key Club down. The fact was evident as various Key Clubbers were volunteering at the McCandless Borough Winterfest and multiple holiday shop evenings at the elementary schools, braving the freezing temperatures to make a difference in their community. They also contributed to several December donation drives, including Walk Her Home, NAI Care Closet, and a food drive for a local temple. At their December general membership meeting, they collected their club t-shirts. Overall, Key Club members have contributed over 2,770 hours of community service so far this school year.
Thank you both. Now we'll move on to the curriculum report. Ms. Hardy.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This month, the board has 4 items for board action and 1 information-only item. Items for board action include the DECA State Career Conference in Hershey, Pennsylvania, the waiver of Board Policy 241 for field trips, Section 6B, North Allegheny School District speech and debate trip to the Pennsbury Falcon Invitational, and the approval of the purchase of Magic School software. The information-only item includes details of student-teacher requests for the district this year.
Any questions or comments on these items? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the finance report. Mr. Weniger.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This month, the board has 7 items for action and 2 information-only items. The actionable items are the certificate of unpaid 2025 taxes, the delinquent tax list for 2024, the appointment of delinquent tax collectors, the preparation of 2026 real estate tax bills, accounts payable list, student expenditures for November 2025, expenditure reimbursement declaration, which we heard earlier this evening about. And the 2 information-only items are the 2025-26 December forecast and the ending cash balances for December 31st, 2025.
Any questions or comments on these items?
The only comment, just a couple clerical things, just due to timing of the year and when this meeting's hit, there's a couple of these items where there's just TBDs listed as we're waiting for some information from local governments, whatnot, to filter. It just hasn't come in yet.
Anyone else? Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Weniger. Thank you, Mr. Hauser. I believe it's a pretty quick turnaround for you, and I imagine many people to get us ready for a January 7th meeting. So thanks to all of you for that, getting right back at it when we came back from the holiday break. Next, we move on to human resources. Dr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This month, there are 8 items for board action. First is resignations and retirements, and there's appointments and wage and status changes, leaves of absence, tuition reimbursement for additional education, honorary and club activities, supplemental contracts, and a confidential settlement agreement and release.
Any questions or comments on the human resources report? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to student services. Mrs. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. We have 1 item that we will be voting upon next week. It is an agreement with the Intermediate Unit 1. We also have 1 information-only item, and that is a student teaching request for special education.
Any questions or comments on these items? All right. right, seeing none, we can move on to Dr. Highland and the superintendent's report.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Warner. We have 6 items for board vote this month: professional seminars and professional development, second read of the following policies: Policy 606, Policy 607, Policy 608, Policy 619, and Policy 620. We also have several informational items, which include first read of Policies 200, Policy 203, Policy 203.1, Policy 209.1, Policy 252, Policy 254, Policy 301, Policy 306, Policy 209.1, and welcome new board members. We're adding lots more policies.
I will note that one of those policy 209.1s is a retirement and one is a brand new policy. And does anyone else have any comments or questions on the superintendent's report? Okay. Seeing none, we move on to speakers on non-voting items. The audience, there is no one here, so I assume there is no one who wishes to speak. So we can quickly move on to our closing items. Does anyone have any announcements or reminders? Seeing none, we are adjourned.